20th edition of the annual Rhodes University Highway Africa conference tackled the theme, the internet and the media this year. Media practitioners, scholars, journalists and academics from across the continent came together in Grahamstown discussing this issue and the internet as a communication tool. We cross once again to our reporter Iviwe Poti for more. Molo Iviwe, sabona sisiphinda ke uthathe lonke ixesha lakho.
Molo Palesa Nati Sianamkela Apa Echini. We are going to speak to the director, Chris Kwabato, who's going to tell us, what was the turnout like this year, as well as what are some of the important or trending issues, if I can put it that way, since we are talking about the internet, that have come out of this year's conference, also celebrating 20 years. Good morning, Chris. Tell us, what was the turnout like? Is it still relevant to have a conference such as this? I mean, in 1997, the discussion was very different to what it is now. I'm sure when it was smaller then, but it's bigger now. And we see a lot of delegates and journalists coming through. But the relevance thereof are still having this conference continuing. And some of the topics, well, the main topics that have come out this year.
It seems that actually our conference is more relevant now than it was before, because our conference 20 years ago was about the internet and journalism, but the internet has actually come now to the fore. It's at the heart of how we communicate. So the conference has become even more relevant than it was years ago. So what we find is that the conference just grew bigger. It was 450 delegates approximately who came from 42 countries to Highway Africa this year. But also the exploration that we did of the themes that we looked at. First of all, people did discuss with themselves whether journalism was a business. Was media a business? People decided that no, not in Africa. Media is not a business in Africa. Media is actually about activism. It's about speaking truth to power. The second day, which is the last day of the conference, people did look at the issues of mobilizing online using hashtags. What did that imply? And people did agree that it was important that people use social media to speak truth to power. So we found that actually the conference remains so relevant, and that we affirmed that the internet is at the heart of how we communicate.
Chris, you've already alluded that, now social media is also seen as a movement. We find that social media is very raw. Social media is not regulated. And sometimes, we infringe upon the rights of others. But we are saying it's important to have something that speaks so honest to the power, to government, to, things that are oppressing people. But has there been a discussion in terms of, how do we then not step into an area where we're actually violating people's rights, or we're crossing the line?
We did discuss a number of things around ethics in cyberspace. How do we regulate issues of bullying online, which does happen? Issues of hate that is spread online. Should we enter into a social contract, a voluntary social contract? What we are wary of is when governments step in to try to regulate behavior online, because governments at times can go then to the other end, which is the excess of actually stopping voices from expressing themselves. We've seen this in other countries, such as Uganda, where social media has actually been cut off during elections. We do not want that. Where the recent elections in Zambia, there was actually a whole debate as to whether the government would be able to stop social media being used in order to discuss those elections. So we think that as the internet matures, people should then be able to behave more ethically within that space. But otherwise, it is a great platform for freedom of expression, and that's what we celebrated.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your time.
Thank you so much.
Well, Palesa, there we have it. Things that have come out is that we actually need to educate and empower ourselves a bit more in terms of ethical social media, using social media in an ethical way, so that we don't actually violate the laws or, violate anyone's rights. But most importantly, this conference is still, very important to any media house moving forward into a space that, we're only experimenting with, which is the internet. But for now, it's back to you guys in studio. Later, we'll try and get some students in terms of how did they, receive what has been said at this conference this year.